Hey Thrive families, let's talk about early signs of autism. And if I'm going to be even a little bit more clear, this is going to be a video about earlier signs of autism because there is already a lot of conversations around those early indicators. There's stuff like eye contact or maybe delayed communication, certain milestones that are being missed. There are a lot of different indicators that people are encouraged to look for around that 2 to 4 year old window. But what we see is there's even some earlier indicators that there's some stuff that's going on neurologically, developmentally, that are going to be red flags and indicators that that's going to be a kid that's struggling. And a lot of the parents that we talk to, they have this experience, right? They'll talk about kind of that mom gut instinct that something was going on with their child. Maybe they're concerned about something that happened during the pregnancy, or they said this or that happened in the birth process, and I've always wondered, is that connected to what's going on with my kid? Well, more often than not, there is a path, there is a connection. So let's walk through it. What are these earlier signs? Well, those ones that are typically talked about, the eye contact or the speech, the repetitive behaviors, those are all a little bit more advanced, right? It takes higher level cognitive functions to make that happen, which is why it is that 2, 3, 4 and beyond year old window that we're noticing those. But what happens before that? A baby's life is pretty simple. There's two main centers of neurology that are functioning. It's your motor system and your digestive system. So there's some early warning signs taking place in those areas that we see connected to stuff like autism. So in that motor system, what does that look like? Well, for one, it's a kid who is super tense. They are maybe arching, they're rigid, they're stiff, usually they're fussy when that's going on too, if you've got a kid like that. So that is something that we see as a red flag. Head control can be an issue as well. And that can go both ways. That can either be a kid who's holding their head up right away because they are super tense and super stiff at birth, right? They've got a 1-day-old or a 4-day-old where someone told you your baby's really strong, but really they're just really tense and stressed out. Or the opposite, you've got a 5-month-old that's barely figuring out head control still. That's a problem too. So too much or too late on the head control. Other stuff that we're seeing, any of those next steps on the milestones, whether it's sitting up independently on their own, pushing up into that position, crawling and walking, any of those being delayed or being a struggle or maybe not hitting perfectly, those are all red flags that something is off in that motor control system. And then digestively, GI system, that might look like they're super colicky and fussy because their belly is always disturbed. Or it might look like spit up, or they're refluxy and they're even projectile vomiting and throwing up all the time, or they're constipated. There's some sort of GI disturbance as well. Now, the reason we can connect those earlier signs to autism is because it's the same thing that's manifesting later on as that speech or that higher level delay, the eye contact, stuff like that. It's the same process just happening earlier because that process is a kid stuck in stress. Typically, previously, when, decades ago, we were first learning about autism, we had a feeling it was genetic related. It was a genetic based condition, kind of like we used to think that everything was. The reality is that's not the biggest piece of it, right? Maybe there is slight genetic predispositions, but the bigger factors are the environment, the stuff going on in our environment, and specifically how our nervous system is adapting and responding to those challenges. And in every single one of those early warning signs, or the earlier ones that we're just talking about, the underlying theme is it's a kid stuck in stress. It's a kid stuck in a shutdown, fight or flight, sympathetic mode instead of their optimal growth and development state. The difference is it just shows up and manifests differently at different ages, right? The baby, it shows up in certain ways because all they're doing is eating and sleeping and pooping. But then when they get to those toddler years, that shows up and manifests differently because we expect more and there's more things that are supposed to be taking place at that point. That whole thing is what we refer to as the perfect storm. Maybe you've seen some of those workshops or those conversations. And obviously there is so much more that goes into that of how those things are connected, how pediatric chiropractic has a role in calming that sympathetic or that stress response. But we can't fix it until we understand it more. So hopefully this video helps with that. But then absolutely, let's talk more about what we can do to get that kid back on track. When you are noticing those early warning signs or the earlier ones, maybe you've got the baby or the 4-year-old or the 8-year-old. There's never a point this is too late, but the sooner we can intervene, the better, because the less time they've been stuck in that state. If you want to learn more about this, some of those early signs, we're going to have a link to this article on early signs of autism in the bio of our page here. So make sure you check that out and go to the link, and hope that helps and you can learn more there too. Reach out with any questions, guys. Can't wait to talk to you soon and help your family thrive.